Hey guys, Dwayne here. Today I want to talk a little bit why we think things are worse than they really are. Now, I know in the beginning for me, when I was going through this, I thought everything was a catastrophe and that the whole situation was dire and that there was really no way to get out of this without it being a complete mess, which, I mean, it was a mess, but what I mean is I believed the hype, right? I believed what she was saying, and I believed the stereotypes of what everyone always says, right? Everyone always says that the courts are stacked against the men, you're not going to get custody. You're not going to, you're only going to get every other weekend because that's just the way it happens, and I believed all that stuff. I kept going through all the worst case scenarios that could happen, right? Like I said, I was convinced, and in my situation, she was trying to do a move away to out of state. So I was completely convinced that she was going to win, that the court would believe, or at least err on the side of caution. Now, part of that is because I had other friends who were telling me that too, right? They were basically trying to feed that to me. So it was amping up my own, the fears I already had. It was amplifying that and making it worse. So I kept going through those scenarios and I was convinced it was going to happen. Now, I was doing everything I could to try to make sure that it didn't happen. But in the back of my mind, I really thought it was going to happen. Now, I was also convinced that the court would believe all the smear campaigns and the triangulation with the kids would cement that what she was saying and what was being said in court would be believed by the custody evaluator and the judge, and that they would say that that I was a horrible person, I shouldn't be involved with my kids' lives, and that was that. Now, as you can imagine, I couldn't relax through any of this. And I was extremely stressed and anxious throughout the entire process. It just, every time I heard a little piece of news or when something didn't quite go the way I had hoped it would go, I would immediately start thinking of the worst case scenarios and what it meant, and amplifying those fears to make believe in my own mind that those things were actually going to happen. Now, the problem is I couldn't see the good that was actually happening around me. There was little comments that were made by other professionals, and custody evaluator and stuff that I just didn't hear. And I believe that there was no way to recover from all of this, and that, everything that I had lost was permanent and my entire future was destroyed, and all of that, catastrophic thinking. Okay, so let's fast forward, 4.5 years to where I am today. So what have I learned from all of this? Although this situation is incredibly complicated and difficult, nothing was as dire as I really thought it was going to be. All those worst case scenarios didn't happen. She didn't get full custody of the kids. They didn't move out of state. The child support and spousal support numbers that were awarded through the temporary orders, which were really bad and really scary, were reduced. They're still really high and it's an annoying number, but it wasn't as catastrophic as what those original numbers were. The other thing is the court and the custody evaluations didn't believe all the stories that were being said about the situation. When they did their thing, they did not determine that I was a horrible human being that shouldn't be around my kids. That, they didn't find that. And when they talked to the kids, they determined that I did have a good relationship with them. They understand. You got to keep in mind the context of the situation. You're going through a divorce. Divorces are complicated anyways, but then you add in a person or an individual with a personality disorder, and that just makes it, 9,000 times worse. And most of the people in the professional systems, they're aware of that. So as long as those accusations aren't backed up by your actions, then they're going to see through it. So although what the kids said wasn't necessarily helpful that they said to their mom, and anything derogatory that was said was immediately put in court documentation and letters and stuff to attorneys and in the declarative summaries and even the the custody evaluation, right? I mean, because you have an opportunity to address your concerns on what you think is wrong or what you think is an issue and what you're concerned about, and they get to do the same thing. Just because someone says something doesn't make it true, right? I mean, they can say whatever they want. They can accuse you of whatever they want, but ultimately it has to be backed up. And in my situation, even though they were taking what the kids had said and embellishing it, or not embellishing it, but amplifying it to make it seem worse, the kids have a decent relationship with me. So it wasn't, they were not saying, I'm scared of my dad, I don't want to be around him, he's scary and mean and whatever. I mean, that wasn't substantiated. Now, the other thing I missed, and I wish I would have been able to pay attention to it more when I was going through it, because it had the potential to make me feel a little less anxious and a little calmer, were the subtle comments of positive reinforcement that were said by different people throughout the process. Now, early on, I had a final meeting with the marriage counselor where obviously they're not going to break confidentiality, and they're going to maintain their integrity and conflict of interest and stuff and those issues. But there were comments that were made there were comments made as much as they could say that if I would have been more open to it, I would have realized that they were saying, hey, you have a really weird situation. You need to be talking to your attorney about this weird situation. You need to have them, do a custody evaluation about this situation, and you need to have us subpoenaed so we can talk. In retrospect, I should have taken that as an indication that the situation was obvious and what was going on was obvious. But at the time I couldn't, right? I was incredibly stressed and scared and nervous about what was going to happen. Now, even comments that were made during the custody evaluation that were, I guess telling would be the right word, right? So we have to be open to those comments that people make. Because think about it. A professional is not going to come up to you and say that your ex has a huge problem, right? That's not their job. Well, in some ways it's their job, but they're not going to say it to you, okay? What they will do is they will try to say things to give you an idea of what's going on. And I, in retrospect, looking back, a lot of that happened, right? The incident I just told you about with the marriage counselor is a good example. There were a couple of comments that were made during the custody evaluation, which, led me to believe that things weren't as bad for me than what I originally thought. And I'll tell you, even after that first day from that meeting with the custody evaluation, I was freaked out. I was scared to death because my ex had made the comment that she was leaving the state. I've decided I'm moving out of state. And it freaked me out because that's what I was afraid of. But there were subtle comments throughout the entire process that had I been able to take a breath, calm down, and realize that, although the situation isn't going to be fun, it isn't catastrophic by design. So I really should have taken a step back and listened to those people. Even my attorney gave me, I had two attorneys during the process, but both of them had given me advice saying, hey, you're doing okay. Everything's pretty good. Just relax, right? And it's really tough. And you guys know this, right? If you're dealing with somebody who's actively running a smear campaign against you and trying to manipulate your children, trying to manipulate everyone around you to have this false narrative, it completely freaks you out, especially whenever you don't know what it is and you don't understand what it is. So you're even that much more freaked out by it because you're dealing with a situation where you're looking at somebody that you used to really care about and you thought that they cared about you, and they're doing these things that make absolutely no sense. You are completely blindsided by it. Okay, the problem with this and the hard truth is this situation is incredibly scary, right? This is your entire relationship with your children and your future is on the line. Whatever comes out of this, especially whenever you're in the beginning process of it, is going to alter the rest of your life. And it's incredibly scary because you don't really feel like you have a say in it. You know, this is going in, you have one person who's saying you're a monster, right? And you're trying to say you're not. And more than likely, you're probably not saying the other person's a monster. You're probably just trying to defend yourself because you're not, you know, you're not in the mode of thinking about this as the war it actually is. Not necessarily that I would recommend that you go tit for tat, because when you do that, then you both look like knuckleheads, and you start diminishing your own credibility. The deal is, ultimately, you don't really know what's going to happen. You know, someone is actually judging you and going to determine the course of your life. They are going to determine where your kids live, what your custody, not evaluation, but your custody arrangement is, your timeshare thing is. Well, that's if you don't ultimately come to an agreement and you settle this out of court. But I mean, if it keeps going, you know, you are going to have someone else make the decision. And that is that is really scary. Bottom line, guys, things really aren't as bad as they seem. Now, they're not great. I'm not saying that, you know, it's a bowl full of rainbows. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we get so caught up in what we think is going to happen and how bad this is going to be. And I'm not diminishing that it's not bad, right? I mean, it is bad. But when these things start happening, we fall into it. We make it so much worse and harder on ourselves than it really needs to be. You know, I mean, we need to go in with an open mind, right? I mean, you need to go in and understand you're not going to get everything you want. I think one of the things that's really bad for a lot of people, at least if you're the breadwinner, I mean, stereotypically, it's the father. You don't realize what fair is, right? I think most of us go into this situation, and even if you're a female and you are the breadwinner and you're fall into this category as well, you think, okay, X amount of money is probably what's really appropriate. And that would be, you know, that would be good. That would be, you know, that would be sufficient, and, you know, that would be fair. And I could have my life and they could have their life, and they're going to be able to get it, you know, and you think they're going to get a job, and you're going to think, you know, you're thinking along those lines. And then when the reality hits you, whenever they start, when the, you know, the temporary, like when the temporary orders come down, it seems devastating. And then all those fears that you have start, you know, popping up even more. I mean, you may have had fears before, but whenever you see this number and you see the timeshare and you see how things initially start, you freak out because it's completely out of the normal. You know, not out of the normal. It's something completely unexpected. You know, I think that there should be more information to really prepare people for this, so that you don't get blindsided, right? I mean, and if you're not paying attention and you're dealing with a toxic person who has a personality disorder, and you think that you're going into court thinking that everything is going to be, you know, for the most part fair, you have another thing coming. And if you're not prepared, you get that first court hearing, you're probably going to get completely blindsided. But even if you do get blindsided, it's not the end of the world, right? I mean, it's not a great situation, and you're going to be really mad and angry and, you know, trying to cope with the numbers and the finances, and the timeshare is going to be incredibly complicated. But that is just the beginning. All right. So bottom line, if you're starting this and you're going through this, or even if you're in a situation where you're dealing with whatever's going on right now, and you start thinking that things are worse than they really are, or you think are not necessarily worse than they really are, because at the time you're not going to think that it's over exaggerated. You're going to think it's reality. You need to take a step back and just take an objective view at what's going on. Listen to the people around you whose opinions really matter, like lawyers and therapists and stuff like that, and determine what your strategy really is and how bad things really are. Hey guys, I want to wrap this video up. If you have some things you want to add about how you've dealt with this and how this has impacted you, leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, please subscribe, and I will talk to you guys on the next video. Take care. Bye.